if I can adjust my volume because
Okay.
I've got my earphones in and it doesn't want to let me adjust the volume on my computer. It just stays really loud. Okay.
Sounds all right.
Hello.
Ah, there we go. That's
Hey there, Joe.
I can hear.
Hello.
Is that my? Sorry. God, I don't know what's going on. Okay, we're good now, I think.
Okay. I was like, is that mine?
Sorry.
That's okay. All right, let's check that we're live over in the group. And if anyone's there watching and they can see us,
Say hi.
say hi. And we know that you guys are there. And there are so many questions, which is great. But I don't know if we'll get to them all, but we will really try our best to answer as many as we can. So if you guys can see us and hear us and say hi. So we know that you're there. Cool. There's some people saying hi. All righty. So for those, you're right, Joe?
I'm just going to turn my fan off because it never stops clicking.
Oh yeah, that's the noise that
the background of all my videos.
I laughed when you put, and then there's Fred tapping away.
And then there's Fred.
I know, Fred's so cute. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Elise Comerford and I am an integrative nutritionist and GAPS practitioner and founder of the Well Belly Health Clinic, where we help a lot of families work through their health issues in a very relaxed way without the stress and overwhelm. So that's what we're all about. And I've been working with Joe for, how long is it now, Joe?
Oh, goodness, probably
stuff together. 5
years.
5 years or something, yeah. Which has been amazing. So we've done some, I'm the practitioner in Joe's program.
And you wrote the introduction and the GAP section, gut health section of my new cookbook.
In the new cookbook, which was so amazing. I was very excited to be a part of that. And we've done some webinars together. We were doing live seminars together, which was so much fun.
Yes.
But we all know why that stopped. And what else have we done? Retreat.
Yeah, retreats.
We run a retreat together last year.
And you've helped me out with a few of
your retreats, and you came and helped me out at one of my retreats.
Just a little bit of housekeeping. I'm noticing that some people are getting heaps of notifications in their emails on the comments. You can turn that off in your settings. I think it's bottom left of the screen. You'll see the little cog wheel thing, and there's a setting for notifications if you want to turn that off. Otherwise, you'll just have to go delete them all later. Sorry.
Yeah, I know it is a little bit annoying, isn't it? Because there's nothing we can do from our end.
No, we can't turn it off for you. Sorry.
Yeah. And if you're on your computer, then you should have like a little picture in the top right corner, and it looks like you then be able to go to settings and turn it off there. Settings, notifications, and privacy, and notify me when a comment is created, and you can turn that off. Yes, that's where it is for me on there. If you are on your computer, then you'll be able to turn those off. Cool. All righty, Joe, do you want to introduce yourself? Because I don't think anybody knows you.
There might be some people that don't know me. I'm Joe. The reason I'm here is because I make recipes, and what to say, you're the brains behind the outfit.
Yeah, you should write that one down.
No, so Elise does the sciencey gut health stuff, and I talk about the practical, how to put it into practice in your everyday life with cooking and meal prep and budgeting and meal planning and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the other thing we do
Information.
together is the gut health formula.
Yes, we run an 8-week program together called the Gut Health Formula, which is very practical. So if you're feeling like it's all very overwhelming, but you need to work on your gut health and you need help as in a group setting, that's the Gut Health Formula. And we'll talk a bit about that later.
Yeah, and it's awesome. So 8 weeks, but with 12 months access to everything. So that's, but yes, we'll have a chat about that. Yeah. So let's get down to business. I'll share my screen with you guys because there's slides. Who doesn't love slides? Who doesn't love a slideshow presentation? So here's a little bit of what we're going to cover tonight. So I do like to take a very simple approach to how we look at things. And we want to approach things in a way that's sustainable and not overwhelming. So don't let this information overwhelm you. Just take it in. And especially if you end up doing the gut health formula with us, we go over a lot of this stuff again. And understanding and remembering the details is not important. It's just getting that. It's really nice to have that underlying understanding of what's actually going on in there. We talk a lot about gut health. It can seem a bit of an abstract idea, and just getting an understanding of what that really means. So as you can see here, understanding the gut, we'll talk about the gut-brain connection, leaky gut, which I'm sure most of you have heard of, and how to heal the gut, which is a very important factor in that and what we can help you with. So yes, we like to keep it simple and straightforward and easy to understand and give plenty of time for you guys to ask questions as well. And we already have some questions, which is great, that people have already put in through the week. So we'll get to as many questions as we possibly can and make sure we cover everything for you guys. So we'll have little breaks as well. So I might go through each section and then we might answer some questions, and then that'll just give you guys a bit of time as well to digest, pun intended, to digest the information. Alrighty. So we're going to start with understanding the gut. So I think having a good basic understanding is a very nice place to start. So we're going to look at what the gut is, the gut lining and the microbiome, what they are, very, very important when it comes to gut health, and the role of the gut. So what it's actually there doing and how it impacts on the health of our whole system. So first of all, what is the gut? So here's your anatomy lesson. It's what goes from the mouth and ends all the way down at the business end. So everything from the mouth to the anus is part of the gut. So it's like basically like a tube that goes through our whole body. So from our mouth, then down into our stomach, then moving into the small intestine, and then into the large intestine, and then coming out the other end. So when we talk about the gut, people tend to think of perhaps just the colon or just the intestine. So we're really thinking about that all the way through there. And if you spread that gut lining out, it would actually take up the size of a tennis court, which is just a fun fact, a bit of information there. So it's a lot of surface area we have going on in our gut. That's interacting with everything that goes in our body. So I do like analogies, and one that I like is if you got a pipe, like a pipe, and you stuck it in a bucket of water. So you've got a bucket full of water and you stuck a pipe through that bucket. Maybe you put the pipe through the bucket first and sealed up the hole, and it goes all the way through, and then you pour water into the bucket. No water can go into that pipe. So that what goes through that pipe is not entering into the water. So that pipe is like the outside environment, and inside the bucket is the water. Am I explaining this well? So anything that passes through that pipe is not passing through into the water. So it's actually separate. This is what our digestive system is. It's a pipe that's passing through. If you made that pipe so things could diffuse through, then some things can then pass through into that water. That's what's going on in our digestive system. So some things can diffuse through, others can't, and they pass through the pipe. And when our gut lining, the walls of the pipe, are not healthy, then that changes what can pass through into the water, our blood. So that's, the health of that digestive system. That's why it has such a big impact on the health of our whole body, because this is how we interact with the outside world, this whole digestive system. It's how we interact with every bit that nourishes us from a nutrient level. Things nourish us on a soul level, emotionally, relationships and all those kinds of things are nourishing. So it's getting out the sunshine. But when it comes to getting nutrients from our food, it's all relying on what's going on through this digestive system. So in our gut, there is a population of bacteria. So bacteria are also all over our skin. They're through our nasal passages, in our throat, in our ears, everywhere. So all through that whole digestive system. But there is a large population in our gut. And the brain communicates with the gut. So the brain sends signals to the gut, and the gut does the same thing back to the brain. And actually the gut sends more signals to the brain than the brain does to the gut. And another interesting fact is that the brain and the gut are connected by a nerve called the vagus nerve. And if you cut that nerve, the gut would still function without the brain's input. So that's huge. That's why they call the gut the second brain, the fact that the gut will actually function on its own. It doesn't need the brain, and it sends more signals to the brain than the brain does to the gut. So there is a lot going on in there, which is why the gut affects our mental state so much. And improving the gut can aid in treatment of most things. There is rarely something that someone will come and say to me, oh, this health issue, we're working on your gut help with this. There is rarely, I can't come up with an example to say no to that, because the gut impacts on the health of our whole system. No matter what issue you have going on, it will have some impact. So it may not be the whole picture. There may be other things that need to happen. So an example is when children have issues with, say, dyslexia or dyspraxia or something like that. Working on the gut is a huge part of that, but then they may also need to see an OT or a physio or, speech therapist and things like that. So it doesn't mean that it's the only solution. Sometimes it is all that's needed, but improving their gut is always a part of the picture somehow, because it affects the health of our whole system. Okay. So the role of the gut: digestion of food, that's a pretty obvious one. Absorption of nutrients. So it's not just about the food you put in, that, okay, well, if I put in XYZ, then I'm going to get all of these nutrients. It doesn't work like that. You're relying on the health of your gut and the health of your gut bacteria to be able to get those nutrients from foods. So when we have things like, say, iron deficiency anemia, that's a really, really common issue. It's not always about a lack of iron intake. And a lot of people who have suffered with this will know that their iron intake doesn't really differ from any other member of their family, yet they have iron deficiency anemia. That's because they are not absorbing it properly. There's something going on where they aren't absorbing those nutrients properly. Synthesis of nutrients. So bacteria in our gut can actually make nutrients. B12 is an example of that. And immune function. So what's going on in our gut has a massive impact on how our immune system functions, because in our gut lining, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a second, we have a 2-inch thick layer of mucus, and underneath that are cells of our immune system. And in fact, 80% of it. So a lot of our immune system function relies on the health of our gut. And when the gut is inflamed, it can cause inflammation throughout your whole system, and it can cause inflammation in the brain and lots of issues. So yes, that's just giving you some ideas of what role the gut plays and why when we have issues going on with our gut, it just has this knock-on effect through the rest of our body. and why it's related to so many different health issues. Okay, so we'll move on to understanding the gut lining and the microbiome. So they're two really important factors to understand when it comes to understanding what's going on in the gut and just what we're working on when we're working on healing the gut. These are two things that we're really quite focused on, and a lot of the things we do are focused on working on these areas. And this also gives you a bit of more of an understanding of how gut issues lead to a lot of other health issues throughout the system. So here we're just more going to look at the left side for now. The right side we'll get to when we get to the leaky gut side of things. But for the moment, we're going to look on the left side, which is more of a healthy gut lining. And so this is like a cross section of the gut lining. So if you just imagine if you had that pipe and you cut it, and we're just looking at that cross section. So we're seeing the lining of the gut and we're seeing the blood that's on the other side of that lining of the gut. So the lining of the gut's here, and the lumen, which is the space in the gut where food moves through, is above that. So this is the lumen. This is where food is coming through and things are coming through and interacting with the gut lining. This is the gut lining. And then on the other side is the blood. So that's where we're moving to the inside of the body. I hope that makes sense. So what we're seeing here is the cells of the gut. So on this side, we're seeing nice tight junctions. So that's a nice healthy cells of the gut lining, which is what we like to see. And then that means when things come along in the lumen, which is what we call that, you know, the inside of the pipe, toxins and all different microorganisms and food particles, that these nice tight cell junctions are protecting the blood by being the guards to the castle and filtering what is allowed to come through. So keeping those toxins out, the toxins we want to be removed in the stool. Any of those microorganisms that we don't want in our blood, we want them to be removed in the stool. Nutrients from food, we want that to come through into the blood. So this process is also relying on our gut bacteria as well. So our gut bacteria are breaking down food, pulling the nutrients from that food and helping it to cross over this gut barrier into our blood so we actually can utilize those nutrients, and then it's keeping the stuff out that we don't want to pass through into the blood. So you can see this is a very, very important protective barrier that has a very, very big impact on our health. Okay. So when it comes to the gut bacteria, we have different kinds. So good bacteria or beneficial bacteria, they're the ones that we want to have lots of. And then we have the opportunistic bacteria. So they're the ones that we sometimes call bad bacteria. We call them opportunistic because they can be fine in numbers where they are kept in check by the good bacteria. So as long as it's more about balance than it is about having this or having this one. It's okay to have these opportunistic bacteria there, but it's about the environment. So if that's in balance with lots of the good bacteria and it's all keeping in check and it's all a healthy balance, then and good diversity, then there's bacteria there that given the opportunity would cause a problem, but because we've got a nice healthy diversity and good numbers, then they don't cause a problem and they're actually helpful and we want them there. So that's why we use the word opportunistic rather than bad bacteria. And then we have the transitional bacteria. So transitional, I'm having trouble with my words tonight. Transitional bacteria are more so ones that we get from foods like sauerkraut, where they come in, they do really good work, help us digest foods, help us get nutrients from foods. They even change some of the bacteria in our gut, help to shift out some of the bad guys if there's too many of them, and then they move through. So transitional bacteria are really important. It's important to have things like fermented foods as a part of your diet, which I will go into a little bit more later. So that's the first part of understanding the gut. So a little bit more that I'll add is just understanding how we end up with poor gut health. We're going to talk about this a bit more when we talk about leaky gut. But I'll just add that when it comes to like damaging our gut health, it is something that can happen right from the very beginning. So for an example, for me, I was cesarean born, bottle fed, and had antibiotics quite young. So these are all things that impacted on my gut health. So not to say that C-sections don't save lives, because they absolutely do, and they are a necessity for some people, definitely. The great thing is these days that a lot of obstetricians know about swabbing the vagina and then swabbing the baby when they're born by a C-section, but this is something my mum didn't know, and a lot of people still don't know about. But that does impact on the gut health of the baby, and then not being breastfed. So that also has an impact. Again, it's something that not everybody can do, but given the knowledge that we have now, there's other things that we can do, like I said, the vaginal swabbing. Antibiotics at a young age, something that I had with ear infections, so common for kids getting the ear infections, which are treated with antibiotics, but ear infections most of the time for kids are actually viral. So the antibiotics are pretty useless in that case. And so it's just these kind of factors that start degrading the health of the gut. There's also the fact that you're born with the gut health that your mum has, basically, that your dad does impact on that as well. And so if we look at it like a bit of a snowball effect, if we look at, say, my mum's gut health when she was born, and then she, ate foods she shouldn't have and all that kind of thing, and, damaged her gut health through her life before she had me, and then had me, and then I've taken that gut health and then had my, 27 years before Dylan was born of somewhat damaging it, and then I did get a few years of improving it before I had him, which was great. But yeah, so you can see this snowball effect, that why we're getting more and more gut issues. There are other factors in this, but this is a major factor, that we're generation by generation degrading the microbiome. Positive thing is there is so much you can do, because like I just said, for me, I had like the three, C-section, bottle fed, antibiotics from a young age, and I'm now in a really good place. So when I was a teenager, and through my life, there's been lots of bits and pieces. If you've heard me speak before, you will have heard the full story, but I had I had acne quite bad as a teenager, all over my face, chest, shoulders, back, which was pretty horrible. Lots of thrush, lots of candida issues, sinus issues, bad breath, cysts on my ovaries, cysts in my breasts, anxiety, depression. I can't even remember it all, but I had lots of things going on. And which aren't a problem for me now. So there is so much you can do to turn things around. Even if you can notice that your kids have some, if you starting to get the mama guilt of, oh my gosh, my child I couldn't breastfeed, or anything like that. You don't need to go down that path of feeling guilty about it, but just knowing that there is so much you can do. We are incredibly resilient, and our bodies are incredibly good at healing and repairing. So once you've got the knowledge, there is so much that you can do. Alrighty, should we answer some questions before I go on to the next bit, so we don't do info overload? Was there some you wanted to answer, Jo? I can't hear you.
Sorry, I thought I pressed unmute. Yes, there is a lot of questions. So if you want to answer a few first, how about, is GAPS the only way to heal the gut? Belinda wants to know.
No, it's not. I think it's the best way. I definitely have some level of bias, but I kind of don't as well, because one thing when I trained as a GAPS practitioner is I always, I consciously decided to remain open-minded, that I was like, I'm going to be like, I've done GAPS myself. It really worked for me. I tried everything. So yeah, I tried everything I possibly could. And I knew about gaps for 3 years before I even did it, because I looked at it and went, that's too hard, which is not true. I think everyone looks at it and thinks that. It's because it looks overwhelming if you just try and jump straight in it. It absolutely does not have to be that way. And it was the only thing that really worked for me. And in our clinic,
Are you still there?
am I there?
Yes, now you are.
Yeah. So in my clinic, we've seen, like, between the clinic and the programs that Joe and I run, thousands of people. Like, the reason why GAPS has become so popular is because people have tried everything, and then it's the thing that actually really works, because it's based on really, really simple traditional methods of cooking and traditional ways of eating, the way that we were always meant to. So I wouldn't say that it's the only way, but I do think it's the best way. And for some people, they don't need to go down that path. They just go paleo or whole food or, Western A price, and they see everything. They see all the results they want to see. But if you're doing that and it's not working, GAPS is the way to go. That's that next step of deeper healing. If just changing to a traditional nourishing diet doesn't do the job for you.
But I think, just so people don't freak out, if you research and read about GAPS and understand what, or do our program or get an appointment with Elise and learn what the basic principles, the foundational principles are for gut healing. And those principles are what make up the foundation for GAPS. So even if you just went, okay, I'm just going to focus on the main basic principles, you're pretty much going to end up doing GAPS.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I've had clients come to the clinic who had started on GAPS and were completely overwhelmed, totally freaking out. And I pull them all the way right back and say, we're not, stop GAPS now. Like, we go right back to where they were. And then we start implementing things in a much slower way, really building the foundations, working on some health stuff that I can see we need to address first. And then suddenly they're doing GAPS and they're like, oh my gosh, this is easy. Like, this is not at all the experience I was having. It's the same thing. They're doing the same thing, but we've gone about it in a totally different way. And then they're like, oh, this is actually really easy. And that's what we don't let anybody do GAPS in a state of stress and overwhelm. That's not the way to approach it. You need to approach it in the right way, where you are feeling like, oh, this is just the right next step for me now. I feel so ready for this. That's what we work on in the clinic, just taking people from exactly, this is where you're at now, right? The best next step for you to actually feel that you're improving and that your health is better is to do this thing first. So that's really, really important.
Do you want another question?
Yep.
It's like opening Christmas presents.
I know. Open another.
Okay, so Tia says, I've constantly got thrush all the time, have suffered for many years. I've had numerous blood tests which have come back normal, countless amount of different types of thrush medications. They work for a while, then about a week later they stop and it's back. I've now said that I just have to live with it. I've since read that leaky gut can cause thrush. Is this true? And will doing GAPS help with this?
Yes. So when there is this constant thrush, which is something that I had when I was younger, and I no longer have it ever. And I had it.
Really, I did too.
Bad. I had it bad. So as a teenager.
Oh, so did I.
Yeah. They had to, whatever medication it is that they actually have to ring up and get permission to prescribe it. Yeah. Like, I needed that one. It was so, so bad. So it's a sign that there is definitely a candida overgrowth. There's going to be leaky gut when you have that level of candida, because candida kind of bores holes in the gut lining, which is amazing. And it's probably a sign that you're going to have metals in your system. So when there's big candida overgrowth, it's often because there's metals or other toxins in the system that it's actually very intelligent that your body is trying to protect you from it, and candida wraps itself around those toxins in the system. But it means candida then overgrows. So there's always an underlying reason why something's there, and that's what will be going on. Definitely doing GAPS will help with it, because you're going to repair the gut, you're going to balance out the microbiome and help your body to clear that candida out. With it have been so long term and that you've taken so much medication for it, then you will need the help of a practitioner. Most naturopaths will be onto it with treating Candida, and you're welcome to book in with us at the Well Valley Clinic. We do free 20-minute consults, so we can have a chat and get on top of that for you. Next question. Next present.
Okay. After too many rounds of antibiotics, this is another common problem. I'm looking for ways to speed up the gut healing process, currently suffering with pain after eating and reflux.
Yeah. So I think talking in the rest of the seminar will help with that. So when I talk about the healing foods and like what to bring in for gut healing, that's going to help answer that question. Pain after eating and reflux, there's going to be issues with low stomach acid, which is pretty common when there's been a lot of antibiotic use. So that's something that will need to be worked on as well. The gut health formula would be very good for you, Anita.
Sarah says, I've spent the last 13 months working with a naturopath on IBS and eczema. I'm seeing great improvements, but can't seem to totally settle things down. Would love some recipe ideas and advice on boosting gut health and maintaining it. Okay, so that'll be in the next section too. Sorry, I should have read the last
No, that's okay. And the Simple Healing Food book. So Joe's new book, every recipe in it is actually GAPS. So if you've ever thought about doing GAPS and you're really not sure about it, that is the best book to buy, because you just know, you don't even have to think about GAPS, but you just know that every single recipe in it is a GAPS friendly recipe. So if you just get that book and you start making things out of it, and then like look at things like, just go straight to the dessert section, Joe. When people think about GAPS, they're like, oh, it means I have to like go without. Yes, oh my gosh, look, that's GAPS friendly, that beautiful chocolate cake. So yeah, it is a really fantastic way to just start bringing some of those things in. So yeah, I'd say if you want recipes, that's the book that you need. And yeah,
the chapters are laid out so that the start of each chapter has the most easy to digest gut healing recipes, and then it progresses. So if you know anything about GAPS and you know about intro and full GAPS, basically the early stages of intro have more like really healing foods and very easy to digest foods, so soups and things like that. So it starts off with the soups and then goes into, you know, as you progress on your gut healing journey, it's got like towards full GAPS, but the whole book is GAPS. And if you just want to start getting some healing, nourishing food into your diet, that's an easy way to do it, and a family-friendly way.
Yeah, so good. And the recipes are so simple and amazing. I've made so much out of it.
You have. I know. I keep seeing your photos. I'm like, wow.
I love it so much. Yes.
Nice.
Okay. All right. I've got the questions in front of me too. So Lisa, looking to change my family's lifestyle of bad eating habits to a lifestyle of good eating habits with the gut healing process. Where to begin is right here. Simplifying gut health. Help. Okay. So glad we can help. And yeah, we should say as well, just we will talk more about the gut health formula towards the end. But just to let you guys know that the gut health formula, we don't talk heaps about GAPS in it. It's not about that. If you follow the recipes in the gut health formula, you would end up on full GAPS because they are all full GAPS recipes. But some people do the gut health formula and just introduce as much as they can and still keep eating other stuff. You know, it's really kind of a choose your own adventure. It's just knowing that we're kind of, with the gut health formula, we just want to build things from the ground up rather than going and jumping into something that's really overwhelming and stressful, or trying to rapidly change your family's diet in one go. We work on lots of different things. Like we work on the stress side of things, understanding how that impacts, and how to plan things out better. Joe talks more about meal planning and bulk cooking. You know, it's about
organizing your morning, getting to bed earlier, you know, all sorts of stuff.
So it's about building it all from the foundation. So when you finish the gut health formula, if GAPS is what you want to do, you're way more ready for it. But it might not be what you want to do, and you've just taken everything that's really beneficial from the gut health formula, implementing that and seeing great changes. So that's not, you know, we're talking a bit about GAPS here.
Because we had questions. So.
Yes. Yeah. So, but the gut health formula is not all about it. And even with Joe's book, that it's all the recipes are GAPS friendly recipes, but you can just be bringing some, like starting to make more things like that. So if you're wanting to just make healthier, like gut healing foods, then and bring more in, which is like in the book where I've written in the gut health section at the front, one of the things is to just take it one step at a time. And that's just by starting to add things in rather than just like, I've got to overhaul my whole diet. It's like, I can just take one step and implement one thing. And we could have, you know, if you had 2 meals a week out of that book, then you're like, I know we're having 2 meals a week that are really good and gut healing and nourishing. So
one question we do get a lot is, one lady did ask if you had to do GAPS to heal the gut, but also we get asked, do you have to do it properly? And what do I do if, one question from a lady emailed me to ask, what do you do if you've got like a household where the parents are separated, the kids are 1 week with dad, 1 week with mum, how are you supposed to improve their diet? And we just say, look, the principle of one of the principles of getting healthier is just put those healthy foods into your diet as much as possible. And just say your kids are only with you for 1 week. Well, while they're with you, just get as much nutrient dense food into them as you can. You can't control what's happening when they're not with you. Actually, at least you talk about it, you're probably better.
Yeah, but that's exactly right. You can only do what you can do, and look at it like how you can add more to the cup, not how you can get it perfect, but how you can add more to it. So like how you can just make it better than it is. And even just a little bit better each time. So we have this like attitude towards diet and nutrition as like on the wagon or off the wagon, like, oh, but if I eat that thing, then I've ruined it. I've ruined the diet. Then if I eat that thing, we really don't look at it like that. It's more like, oh, if I can like change breakfast and just make sure my kids are getting a really nourishing breakfast every morning. Wow, they weren't getting that nourishment before. They were having a bowl of cereal. Now they're having eggs or like a really nice healthy smoothie and with some good fats in it. And an egg in there or something, you know, to get some protein. You know, now they're having that, you know, looking at it like you're adding, and that anything you can add is of huge benefit. And that's the kind of the way we want to go with it, because when we try and overhaul everything at once, we're busy people and it just doesn't work. Okay, so I'll keep going, and I'm going to move through the slides fairly quickly because I think there's lots of questions, and just going through and discussing each of those, lots of things get answered for everybody anyway, because we're having that good discussion. So I'll move through this as quickly as I can while still giving you guys the information that I want to give you. So we're going to look at the gut-brain connection, how the gut and the brain interact, and how one affects the other, basically. So there's 2 ways that the gut and brain interact. So there's neural communication, so through neurons. So that's through our nervous system. And then there's hormonal communication. So that's through hormones. So we've got nervous system and we've got hormones. And that's the way that the gut and the brain are interacting with each other. So with the neural connection, we've got our vagus nerve comes from our brain all the way down through. It innervates our heart, our stomach, our intestines, all the way down. And we've got our enteric nervous system. So that's the nervous system that innervates our gut. We've got sensory neurons, and we've got the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest, and the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight. You don't need to remember any of this stuff. And then we've got that hormonal communication. So very interesting is that our microbiome can actually send hormone-like messengers to the brain to make us eat things that we may not want to be eating, like lots of sugar and carbs. So then we've got stress hormones, sex hormones, and then immune system hormones as well. So we've got those 2 ways that of communication. So the cells of our gut communicate with the brain via that vagus nerve. So that vagus nerve stemming from the gut all the way up to the brain. So gut cells are communicating directly with the brain in that way. And then the enteric nervous system is the way that the brain communicates with the gut. So that nervous system that innervates the gut. But like I said, it can function without that. It doesn't need that communication from the brain. And so when it comes to that, the brain and the enteric nervous system, that's where that fight or flight response and stress and all of that has a massive impact on our gut. That's that direct connection. And then there's the hormones. So like I said, bacteria in the gut send hormone-like signals, but then also when we're stressed, that's sending stress hormones that impact on our gut as well. So nervous system and the hormones, how these are communicating. So fight or flight. So that has a massive impact. So that's where what's going on in our brains, because when we're fight or flight, it's usually psychological most of the time. So it could be that your child is in danger and then you're going to go in fight or flight, and that fight or flight is very useful because it's going to help you respond to the situation. But often our fight or flight is psychological, and it's a state that many people stay in most of the time. So especially if there's been a lot of stress, and especially if there has been trauma as well, that you may be in a state where your nervous system is constantly heightened. And this has a massive impact on our whole system. So stress has a huge impact on everything that's going on in our body. And it does have a really big effect on the gut and the way the gut functions. And you know this, like when you get really stressed and you feel sick in the tummy, you get butterflies or anxiety, you know, things like that going on, and how that anxious feelings are where you feel them in your gut. So it has a really, really big impact. So that's where, you know, having a lot of stress can make you more likely to have like IBS symptoms and things like that going on as well, and can drive inflammation in the gut. And then so the gut affects the brain as well. So the gut sends more signals to the brain than the brain does to the gut. If there's inflammation in the gut, that is going to be sent to the brain. If there's an overload of toxicity in the gut, then that is going to be sent to the brain as well. So through the hormone-like messengers and through the vagus nerve, so that nervous system connection as well. And leaky gut plays a big role in that. So when the gut is leaky, then things travel through that shouldn't, and then they go through the blood into and then cross the blood-brain barrier. So we'll go more into the leaky gut side of things now, which I'm sure you guys have heard of before. So we'll talk about what it is, how it's caused, and what issues we get when the gut is leaky. So now we're looking at the right-hand side of the picture. And basically leaky gut is when those nice tight cell junctions are not nice tight cell junctions anymore. And basically, like I said, with that pipe through the bucket that becomes like a sieve, then things are traveling through that shouldn't be. We're not able to, the gut lining is not able to protect the blood like it should. So these things that are over here that couldn't get through because the gut was protecting it, they're just coming through now into the blood. And when it comes to certain food proteins, they'll come through not broken down properly. It means we can't absorb the nutrients from them properly. And they're also then in protein sizes that our body doesn't recognize as food and are actually similar to proteins in our body. And then we've got these toxins and microorganisms and viruses and bacteria and all these things that we want a healthy gut lining to protect us from. But when it's leaky, they're just passing through into the blood and then affecting our every system of our body, and also causing immune responses as well. So when the gut is leaky, we can have issues like I said, nutrient malabsorption. So it's coming through, not getting broken down properly. The bacteria aren't able to, they don't have the time to break it all down properly as it's just diffusing through. And also when the gut's leaky, it means that the bacteria in the gut probably aren't happy as well, because we rely on like the symbiotic relationship between the gut lining and the microbiome. So we need a healthy microbiome to keep the gut lining happy, and a healthy gut lining for the microbiome to live in. and for that to be healthy. So that's why we're working on both. So autoimmunity, food intolerances. So when we have food diffusing through before it's broken down properly, and like I said, in protein sizes that the body doesn't recognize as food, then it starts having an immune response to those. It doesn't recognize it as food, immune response, constantly having an immune response to the same thing. It's going to start forming antibodies to it, and we end up with autoimmunity. So food intolerances, when we're having that immune response, autoimmunity, when we started producing antibodies to that. And the autoimmunity comes as well with the fact that some proteins in foods are similar to proteins in our body. So say if we're reacting to gluten and dairy proteins that are coming through the leaky gut and the way the body doesn't recognize as food, they have proteins that are similar to proteins of the thyroid. So then your body can actually start attacking the thyroid. So that's what can happen with autoimmunity when your body starts attacking itself. Blood-brain barrier breach. So if our gut is leaky and then there's going to be an overload of toxicity in the blood, it can then end up with crossing over into the blood-brain barrier. So we can end up then affecting the function of the brain. So that's when we can see things like sensory processing disorder, dyslexia, dyspraxia, and speech impediments and things like that. And systematic inflammation. So when we've got those toxins coming through, an immune response, it's just going to mean inflammation throughout our system. So it's not sounding like a pretty picture when the gut is leaky. How is it caused? Lots of ways. So these are some of them. What's leading to the gut becoming leaky? So you'll see that stress is right up there. Okay, issues that we might see from leaky gut. This is just some of them, but really it's any issue going on with your health. Like I said before, I'm just going to put my computer on charge. I thought it was nice and charged before. It's very hard to think of any health issue and disconnect it from your gut. So that's more the question. Are there health issues that have nothing to do with your gut? And it is difficult to disconnect that because the gut, that. Hopefully you guys can still hear me okay. I know Joe will let me know if you can't. So I've just unplugged my headphones.
Actually better.
Our gut's connected with everything going on in our body. So it's always going to have some kind of impact. Alrighty, so that's the leaky gut side of things, and we're going to have a look at actually healing the gut, which is the exciting part. So the three things, these are just three simple things that you can focus on. The first is reducing stress. So like I said, stress has a huge impact. The next is reducing inflammatory foods and toxins. So with those two things, we're like, let's stop damaging the gut. And then with the last one, it's add in foods that heal and repair. So we're wanting to add things in that actually heal and repair the gut so that we can improve our health. So stress, different forms of stress, chemical, psychological, and physical. So chemical stress is like eating foods that are you're not tolerating, or eating foods that have a lot of toxins or colors or preservatives, things like that, or exposing yourselves to chemicals in the environment, totally unavoidable altogether. You're never going to have yourself not exposed at all to chemicals, but you can reduce what you are exposed to in your own home. So that's the chemical stress side of things. Psychological stress is what people generally think when we say the word stress, like, are you stressed? Like we think psychological stress. So that's what's going on in here. So it's kind of make-believe stress in a way, because it's just what's going on in our brain, but I know it's what's going on in your life that then drives that psychological stress. And physical stress is, if we are rushing around all the time, it can be injury to the body, it can be over-exercising. So any stress that's physical, and that can come, health issues are a physical stress as well. So there's a lot of crossover between these three.
If you're reacting to foods, that's going to cause psychological stress because it's like, this is happening again. What did I eat? And then physical stress because it's actually causing a reaction in your body, which is physically our stress on the body. So lots of crossover with these three forms of stress. I like to break it down and see that there's different forms of stress. So when you think of changing your diet because you want to heal, and you think of doing something like GAPS, and you start implementing it and you become so stressed and overwhelmed, but you're like, but I have to do it because I've got to fix my health. But you're so stressed and overwhelmed that when you look at the full stress picture, all three sources, your stress is actually increased. So even though you've decreased some chemical stress by improving food side of things and some physical stress, perhaps by some symptoms of reduced, but you've so greatly increased your psychological stress that overall stress has increased, you are not going to get healthier. So I like to just look at stress in that way. So you're really looking at the bigger picture and not causing more stress and overwhelm. This is something that we do in the gut health formula in the first week, and it's called the Wheel of Life. You can take a photo of that if you want to have a go of it. And it's basically, you just look at each area of your life. 10 is great, 1 is not so great. And you just mark a dot on the line, or it can just be in the middle of the pie piece of the, about where you think you're at, and join the dots of that circle. And it just makes it a little bit more tangible, looking at all the areas of your life and where you may be lacking in some balance. And this is where we look at approaching your health in a really holistic way, not just going, I need to heal my gut, so I need to just go headlong into this thing no matter how it affects the rest of my life. You're actually looking at, how's the bigger picture looking? Where do I need to focus my energy? Because all of these factors impact on your health. Okay, so the next one was reduce inflammation. So by reducing inflammatory foods, so poor diet, exposure to toxins, so changing that as much as you can. Stress, which I just spoke about, but stress does cause inflammation, and improving your immune system function, so that you are not so there's not so much inflammation going on. So basically, the main ones to take there are starting to switch out things that in your diet, like say if you were eating like colors and flavors and that kind of thing, starting to just make some changes, which if that's where your diet's at, then starting on GAPS tomorrow would be extremely stressful. So it's just starting to switch some things out and make some changes where you can. And it might be that you do start with looking at what chemicals you're using in the home, and how that's having an impact. And that might be the best place to start. And then we get to the adding in of the healing foods. So the main ones that we look at are meat stocks. If you're not ready to do meat stocks, you can use gelatin, but meat stocks are the best. And we teach how to make them in the gut health formula and have lots of recipes for them as well. They're different to a bone broth. Meat stocks are what actually heals and repairs the gut lining. So they're basically, the big difference is that you're using meat on the bone, like lamb shanks. You can use chicken carcasses. You just want meat, and you can use beef bones that have lots of connective tissue and, some meat still left on them. It's a shorter cooking time. So 2 to 3 hours for chicken, 4 hours lamb, 6 hours beef, so that you actually get the amino acids from the connective tissues, what heals and repairs the gut lining. So that's the kind of meat stock we want to be having, which is much better than using just like store-bought gelatin. If you're using gelatin, you should be using a good store-bought gelatin, like the one Joe sells. I think it's the Changing Habits one on Joe's shop, a quirky cooking shop, is a really good one. And it's, grass-fed and all that kind of thing. Fermented foods. So meat stocks, that's where we're looking at healing and repairing the gut lining. And the fermented foods is where we're looking at, they help with digestion, stomach acid and that kind of thing, and then changing that microbiome by getting the good bacteria in with the fermented foods, and just basically looking at whole foods. So if you want to just have a simple approach to it, it's a really good place to start, of just looking at eating more whole foods, where you're not thinking of following any kind of specific diet, but if you can just say, start with breakfast and think, how could I add more whole foods in at breakfast? And whole food is food close to its natural source as possible. I would consider sourdough to be a whole food, like a good quality sourdough, whereas a store-bought loaf of bread is not a whole food. Like, just look at the ingredients. Could you make it at home? Is your basic whole food kind of tested? Is it a whole food or isn't it? So say like at Woolies and Coles, they sell those Tom and Luke bliss balls, and they're just like cacao, coconut oil, nuts, dates. I would consider them a whole food because you could actually get those ingredients quite easily and make that at home. If you looked at other kind of balls that have ingredients that you've never heard of in there, or numbers and that kind of thing, then they're not a whole food. So quite a simple way to look at it, that if we're eating more whole foods, then we're eating less artificial colors, flavors, preservatives, and all those kinds of things that are not actually food. All righty. You there, Joe? We can get on to some question answering now.
I'm here. Just getting my computer set back up again. Sorry. It's hard to type as well. Okay, so we have some more questions here. Did we answer? Can we watch this later? You guys, this will be recorded. So, yeah.
So it'll stay sitting there in the group. You can
it's
just
the same link.
Play.
Yeah. How to heal a fatty liver.
How to heal a fatty liver. So there's not a short answer to that one. But what I would usually do, I'd get someone digesting fat properly. So we'd use supplements to work on that. We'd use supplements to clear out the liver and start breaking down congestion and get that clearing out. Depending on the health of the person, really depends on what we'd be doing and how much we could do or how long we'd need to take doing it. I like to be really careful not to just jump headlong into like liver flushes and things like that, because they can stir a lot of things up and cause other issues and cause more inflammation. And so I like to take things slowly, but basically it's working on the health of the liver. So getting the liver functioning properly. Yeah.
And on the slides, you had a list of symptoms. Was that for leaky gut? Sorry, I wasn't watching the slides because someone asked about symptoms for leaky gut.
Yeah, so that had issues that come from leaky gut. Symptoms from leaky gut are so broad. But basically, if you don't have vibrant health, then chances are your gut is not amazing. You don't need to go and you can do tests, but you don't need to. It's not really about identifying, is the gut leaky, or doing microbiome testing to find out which bacteria are overgrown or what, I find that it's really about looking at how are you? Is your health vibrant? How is it not vibrant? That's what we need to focus on. So
look at our before and after photos. Not vibrant, not healthy gut.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you're not vibrant and feeling energetic, and if your skin's not glowing, then you can improve the health of your gut.
And someone asked, is it 100% healable for leaky gut?
I could not say 100%. Because,
and it's really hard because I think we get this idea in our mind, I do A, B, and C, and then I'm healthy forever. Mm-hmm. But there's always things in our environment, in our food, stresses on our body, stresses on our mind. So your health's sort of always, fluctuating, but you just keep putting in those nutrient-dense foods as much as possible. And sometimes in your life, you need it more. And other times you can be a bit less strict with it. I find whenever I travel, when I get home, I'm craving meat stock and I will just eat it and eat it and eat it. And it's like my body just knows I need it, and fermented food.
Yeah. Yeah. And like there's some people that have such severe gut damage that they would do something like GAPS and they would never be able to eat any other way again. That's extreme cases. But I've worked with some fairly extreme cases. One example I always give
her name's Helen, and I can share her name because she is always happy for me to tell anybody about her. And she still is the worst case of ulcerative colitis or any inflammatory bowel disease that I've ever worked with. She was on the strongest medication you could possibly be on. So it's like immunosuppressants that cancer patients are usually using. And she was still flaring, like bleeding from the bowel every day. So even on the strongest medication she could possibly be on, she was extraordinarily underweight when she started with me, and very, very, very unwell, and just really reacting to everything. She was so limited with what she could eat, and just still so unwell. She's now doing amazing. We're years in now, but she is doing so well. She's not on any medications anymore and no sign of disease. So that's like, more extreme case of someone who was so unwell. She's now eating a really broad whole food diet, which is just incredible from where she was at.
I always love the story too of Gemma with the really bad chronic fatigue, couldn't leave the house.
Yeah, Gemma couldn't even get through a full session with me when she first started, because laying on the lounge.
Oh, laying
on the lounge with the laptop. It was just too much brain power for her. She was just had such bad chronic fatigue, and yeah, she's now off and traveling and like doing amazing things, and she's incredible. So yeah, like if you're sitting there with like, I've got some this and this going on, I definitely could improve my health, then you are very likely to see all the improvements you want to see. When there's people that do this, that health is quite bad, and they see all the improvements they want to see. So that's why I say that we are so resilient, and we can see so much improvement in our health.
Can you talk a little bit about SIBO, because there's a few questions about how do you work on that?
Yeah. So when it comes to SIBO, it's I'm just seeing, I'm pretty sure on my website I've got a blog post on it, so I'll share that as well. I don't follow there it is. I've got a blog post on why we don't recommend low FODMAPs diet. So SIBO is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and basically it's an unhappy microbiome, an imbalanced microbiome. And when you go following something like low FODMAPs diet, you actually just make the situation worse, because you're taking away foods that feed gut bacteria, all of your gut bacteria, not just the you address it by working on the health of the gut, by working on stomach acid and things like that. So yeah, when it comes to SIBO, we do not follow low FODMAPs. We may reduce some FODMAP foods just to ease symptoms for someone while we work on the actual root cause. So we work with a lot of SIBO in the clinic. So at the bottom of the video and the comments, I'm just putting a link to the blog post that I wrote about why we don't go down the low FODMAP route, and a bit more about SIBO there.
What about if someone's pregnant and has a range of 17 weeks pregnant, has a range of gut health issues, getting tested for SIBO, looking to optimize her gut health before giving birth to help give her baby the best start?
I would say book in with the clinic so we can have a chat and see where your health is at. So when you're pregnant, you do need to take things slowly. You do need to be careful about what you do, because it does impact on the baby. So you don't want to make any drastic changes. So it really depends on exactly where things are at and what are the best steps to take and how to go about that in the best way. So best outcomes for you and Bub as well, which is exactly what you'd be wanting. So yeah, that's what I'd recommend there.
What about if you're not pregnant, but you bloat so much you look pregnant?
And
Heidi says, I've tried so many naturopaths, gluten-free, dairy-free, low FODMAPs, never done guts. she's overwhelmed by the thought of gaps, but she just gets larger and larger until in the evening she looks 6 months pregnant.
Yes, it will help so much. So, and yeah, always start with full gaps. So for anyone who's wondering what we mean when we say full gaps and intro gaps, full gaps is basically a whole food diet. And if you ate just out of Joe's cookbook, then you would be on full gaps and you wouldn't even know it, because there's such a broad range of food in there. And the intro is the part that people look at and freak out because it looks so overwhelming, but it's really not when you approach it in the right way and you get there in a way that's right for you. And if it even is right for you, you don't need to implement anything that doesn't feel good, and that feels stressful and overwhelming and not the right next step. You just do as much as you can. But yes, full gaps would really help there, Heidi.
Kelly says, what do you recommend people do to avoid COVID being so bad? Like, we're all probably going to get it, but how to reduce the symptoms?
Heal your gut, because it's really about your immune system. So what's going on in your gut affects how your whole immune system functions. And I don't have links to the studies at the moment, but
I know there was a National Geographic article on the importance of good gut health to cope with COVID, and I thought that was really interesting. I've got that article if anyone wants it.
Yeah, so there is lots of research happening about nutrition and gut health and the immune system when it comes to COVID. So yes, definitely working on the health of your gut, because like I showed in that slide with the leaky gut and the blood and that's our immune cells of our immune system underneath that gut lining. So that is like the number one thing you can do, and reduce your stress and get out in the sunshine.
Well, I just have to tell everybody that our family had COVID and I had no idea. I thought I had a mild cold. I had a headache for one day, and usually when I get a cold, I get headaches. So I was like, oh, it must be a cold. And then like a week or so later, my husband got tested for work and it was COVID. So yeah, I think I would not have coped as well a few years ago when my gut health was so poor. But it just was amazing how well we all coped. I've got a son with an autoimmune disorder, and we've worked on his gut health, and he was so good. He was just over it really quickly.
Yeah. And I'm still the only person I know that hasn't had it.
Well, maybe it's just your gut is too strong. It's just fighting it off. Yeah. And Mariana wants to know, what's your opinion on hand sanitizer and gut health? All the COVID questions. You there? I think I keep losing her. Hello. Okay. I don't know if Elise is frozen only for me, but I'm just going to quickly check in the group and see if it's just me. There she is. You're muted. Ta-da, she's back.
So yeah, I do find it very concerning, particularly if you can just use soap or just like a more natural sanitizer that's just has an plain alcohol base, because using all the antibacterial stuff, so that's not amazing. So I know lots of health food shops sell.
If you just go on to like Nourished Life, they've got the more natural ones.
Which work just fine because they're alcohol based.
Where were we? Do you have more of your talk to do still, or do you want
questions? No, we're just questions now.
All right, cool.
We'll talk about our health formula.
All right, so how do you know if your gut is fully healed? Is there a way to test, or is it just a matter of not feeling symptoms anymore?
Pretty much, like that's the aim. When you think of like why you want to work on your gut health, it's because you want to feel amazing. So if you feel amazing, then great. There's no need to do testing to figure that one out.
Yeah. High cholesterol. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So high cholesterol happens when there is something in the body that needs to be healed, and also when there is inflammation. So, well, that's something in the body that needs to be healed. So if there's inflammation, and also when the liver is not functioning well. So the liver takes care of our cholesterol levels. It will increase cholesterol if our body needs it. It will also lower it, reabsorb it. So if liver's really overloaded, then it's not going to do its job properly with looking after the cholesterol side of things. But the main cause is going to be inflammation, which is going to be due to stress and to poor diet, sugar, high carb, processed foods, those kinds of things that cause inflammation. So inflammation is the root cause problem there. Cholesterol is not the root cause problem. So if you just do things to actively lower cholesterol, you're not actually solving the problem, because inflammation is always the problem to start off with. You need to address the inflammation.
Can gut issues be the cause of endometriosis?
Yes.
Short answer.
Yeah, short answer is yes. And it's going to be hormone related. There's also going to be other things at play there. Usually an iodine deficiency has a big impact on the health of the reproductive system. But yes, endometriosis is definitely one of those things where working on the health of the gut is going to have a big impact on that.
What about parasites? Kate says she's been put on Flagyl for 10 days. Do you have any tips for helping get rid of parasites?
Yeah, so when it comes to parasites,
we have a whole podcast on that.
We do have a whole podcast on that. Yeah, that'd be good.
Oh,
and I probably wrote a blog post about that too. I don't agree with the approach to parasites in like, oh my gosh, I got these parasites in my body and I need to kill them and get rid of them and get them out because they shouldn't be there. It doesn't really, no, it definitely does not work like that. So our bodies are very smart and the way they interact with nature. And so this is probably going to be a long answer, but I get a bit passionate about the parasite side of things. So say if you had a piece of land that's been farmed and like using sprays and chemicals and all this stuff, completely depleted of nutrients, and the soil microbiome is totally damaged, and then they go away from that land and leave it, they're not farming on it anymore, it's just left. What will happen to that piece of land is that first it will invite in fungi. So fungi will start to grow there, and molds and things like that. And then other bugs will start getting in there, parasites will start getting in there. And what they're doing is they're cleaning up toxins. So fungi and molds really clean up toxicity. So they'll start cleaning all of that up. And as they're doing their job cleaning it up, over time, other bugs will be able to come and live there, and there'll be other parasites that can come, and they'll do their job of cleaning something else up and adding some kind of nutrition to the soil while they're doing it. And then it'll get to the point where weeds are actually able to start growing there. And so then weeds will start growing there, and they'll add nutrition to the soil, and they'll clean some things up until some bugs and other animals can start coming to live there, and then they'll start pooping there and eating things, and that'll start changing the microbiome of the soil even more until other things can grow, and other things, you know where I'm going with this, that it's basically totally depleted, things come in, clean things up, they constantly keep improving it until that piece of land could just completely regenerate itself through this very, very intelligent relationship with other things in the environment. Our gut is doing the same thing. So it's just that our system's not coping with it. So if, we're inviting fungi and candida, we're inviting these things to overgrow. We're inviting parasites in, they clean up metals. Parasites clean up metals. Candida protects your body from metals. So they're being invited in for a reason. So when you look at this like, okay, well, I've just got to go and kill all these parasites. I've got all these parasites in my system, I need to kill them and get rid of them. It doesn't work like that. You need to understand what's at the root cause of this. And some of these parasites actually can work with the body. So we don't fully understand how everything in there is working and how it's interacting and how it acts in different situations with different bacteria. So it's not this simple, oh, I have parasites, they're the cause of my health problem, so I need to go and kill them all. It doesn't work like that. You need to address what's the root cause problem here and how do I address that and improve the ecosystem in there. So we want to be constantly just improving that ecosystem, and that is what gets all of that under control. This is a self-sustaining ecosystem if we look after it properly.
What about MTHFR and a high level of sulfates? This lady Robin has done a microbiome test and discovered all this. And it's another big issue, but big conversation.
Yeah,
I put a podcast in the group about MTHFR as well that Elise and I did.
Yeah. So MTHFR, genes load the gun, environment pulls the trigger. So it's not something I test a lot or really often at all anymore, because when it comes to MTHFR gene mutation, 100 years ago, people will have had it and they never will have known, because they weren't exposed to as many toxins and
they ate real food.
Yeah, exactly. So then it wasn't a problem. So yes, it can definitely impact on your health, but it doesn't really change the way we approach things, because in the end we have to work on the gut, we have to work on the health of the liver. Same when it comes to sulfates. It's just there's that overgrowth of sulfur producing bacteria. It's the microbiome's out of balance, and that's what needs to be worked on. What you'll find when you start looking at an approach like GAPS is everything becomes so much more simple, because you're like, oh, I've too much sulfates. I've got MTHFR. I need to avoid FODMAP foods because I've got SIBO. You have all these things going on. I'm intolerant to salicylates, intolerant to histamines. You can go down all these different rabbit holes with all of those things, and then you just come back to something like GAPS, and you're like, well, it resolves that because it gets to the root cause. It resolves that because it gets to the root cause. Oh, we address that. Parasites, metals, all these things. We get to the root cause by following a much more simple approach rather than doing all these testing and all these supplements. And, it's really,
dollars.
Yeah, that's really very symptom based. So SIBO is a symptom, parasites are a symptom, all these things are symptoms. We want to get to the root cause.
Anxiety is another symptom that many of you probably have dealt with if you're working on gut health, and that was one of our main symptoms. There's an 11-year-old girl here that has anxiety, and her mother says that they're currently seeing a naturopath using herbals and supplements to help with mood and also mold exposure. So that's another big topic too.
That is a big topic, and hopefully the mold exposure is not there anymore, because that's the most important thing with mold, is to remove yourself from the exposure. And then you need to work on things to help get the mold out of the body. But that is where diet will have a very good impact there. Jo has a perfect example of that with her son Isaac and the anxiety.
Yeah. And then Simi with the mold. We've been through it.
Yeah, definitely. So now's probably a good time to talk a little bit about the gut health formula, and then we can keep going. Questions. So if anyone
got a lot of food questions here, so it is probably a good time. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So with the gut health formula, that our next round starting next Friday, the 11th, and it goes for 8 weeks, but there's 12 months access to all of the content. And really the important thing to tell you guys about how the gut health formula works is that it basically encompasses everything we've been talking about tonight about how we approach it. That it's all about taking it one step at a time, and we really build things from the absolute foundation. And the great thing about the gut health formula, and this is the feedback we get from everyone, we've had hundreds of people do it so far, well, probably getting into the thousands now, is how easy it is to follow and how much you're actually able to implement, because it's not about following things exactly. It's not like, okay, so this week we're doing this and you can take from it what's going to work for you. And it can be a matter of during the 8 weeks, you may just implement a little bit, and then over the 12 months of access to everything, you can then keep implementing more. So the feedback so far has been amazing in just that it's actually doable. That it makes a lot of sense. It really simplifies things, and we've had some really good outcomes for people implementing those changes.
Another bit of feedback we got, because during the COVID lockdowns, people were so stressed out, and probably some of you still are feeling that way. And we had a lot of people say that the program was what got them through, because we had such a focus on how to cope with stress and things that you can do to reduce stress, as well, like practical things that you can do to reduce stress, as well as the food side of things. And they said at first people are like, what? You're not just going to give us a list of do eat this, don't eat that, straight from the start so we know what to buy? And we're like, nope, you're not allowed to think about food for the first week. We're just talking about stress. And they're like, but later on they were like, that was really good.
And so many people say that the first week is what changed their whole approach to their health, how they did the rest of it. Like, yeah, that first week seems to be the really big one of getting that, totally changing how you're actually approaching your health so that it can be sustainable, because that's why Joe and I developed the gut health formula, was to have a program and have an approach where people are actually getting the outcomes. Like we could easily have done a program where it's like, okay, start this from day one and this is what you eat and this is what you don't eat. And people would get like incredible outcomes in 8 weeks, but they wouldn't be able to stick with it. It wouldn't be sustainable. It'd be totally stressful. So they might get these drastic changes that are great for us. We get these great testimonials. We get to share around like these drastic changes, but what we care about is, where are you in 12 months time? We see no point in taking people through this 8-week protocol that they can just stick with for that time, know that it's helped them, but can't stick with it because it's too stressful and overwhelming. And then it just gives you this new thing to feel bad about yourself about. Like, oh, that thing worked, but I couldn't do it. Yeah.
Most people wouldn't be able to do it for 8 weeks if it was really harsh anyway, because you know, you're trying to cook for your family, you're trying to take your kids everywhere, you're trying to look after it's too hard. But if you start slowly and add habits in little by little, then it's doable.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was what we felt really passionate about in creating this program, that it was like, it has to be something where in 12 months time, people are still saying, I'm still doing those things that I started implementing whilst doing the gut health formula. And that's what we have happening. So I often get people, like I do, our clinic does live Q&As every fortnight. So if you're not following my clinic page, jump on and follow my clinic page. It's at Well Belly Health Clinic. We do the live Q&As on different health topics, and we always have people that are like, I did the gut health formula last April, and like it's amazing. So we still get lots of that feedback from people that did it like a year or so ago, and how much it's changed things for them. So that was our goal, which is amazing that that's actually happening.
Amy says that she wanted to know about the gut health formula and wanted to know how she could learn to manage her own food intolerances, and wanted to know what kind of ongoing support the program includes and how it can assist with perimenopausal symptoms. Yeah, that's the main gist of her question.
Yeah. So food intolerances aren't something we want to manage. We want to resolve them completely. So that's something that can happen. And we have practitioner support in the gut health formula. So there's a couple of practitioners, Mel and Beck, and Nadine. Actually, all 3 of them are going to be jumping.
And Elise.
And me. Yeah, and me. So 4 of us. So you have lots of practitioners in there helping. So we answer lots of questions. So with the gut health formula, there is a Telegram group attached, which makes it really easy. You can do it on your phone to ask questions. So you might be out doing your shopping and you're like, oh, I need to ask something, and you've got your phone there, ask on Telegram.
Is this okay to eat?
Yeah. So there's lots of practitioner support during that 8 weeks. And then there's also the option, which is only for participants of the gut health formula, where you do get the option of a one-off consult with one of the practitioners in my clinic. So they're things that you can add on as well. So if you find you're doing the gut health formula and that's all, really need a consult, a one-off consult as well, you can actually book one of those, which I don't normally do. My clinic don't do one-off consults. We do packages because we do work with people over periods of time to work through issues. But for gut health formula participants, we do offer those one-off consults because they are part of the program already. Does that answer that question?
I should just check if I'm sure there's a lot more questions that have been added.
And so when it comes to cost, you guys are getting an opportunity for a discount. So we're doing a $20 discount for people who have signed up to this webinar, and you'll get an email after the webinar finishes. So I think it's like 5 minutes after it finishes or something like that. You're going to get an email that'll have link to sign up to the gut health formula, and that link will automatically apply a $20 discount code. And there's options for pay in full or a payment plan as well, which splits the payments over 3 months. And the full price is $298.50. So it's quite reasonable. And you can split that, but then you get the $20 discount, and you can split it, the payments over 3 months as well, to make it even easier. So it's pretty much it's like only not much more than the price of one consult, really, and you get a lot of value, so much value for that.
Maeve wants to know if it's worth seeing a naturopath and doing GAPS, combining probiotics and herbs with GAPS. Don't you have a naturopath that works with you?
Yeah. So we have naturopath in the clinic, and we do use herbs. So definitely you can use herbs with GAPS. You just need to be careful about some of the supplements. They'll have ingredients that aren't ideal. So that's just, we don't like to go overboard on the supplement side of things. Herbs are great and definitely something you can combine in there.
And Monica asks about the live sessions, what time they are. So you're doing Tuesday. Are you doing Tuesdays at 1 or something?
Something like that, yeah. And you're doing Saturdays.
And I do Saturday afternoons.
Yeah.
But they're all recorded and you can watch them later. You can go in and put your questions. We answer during the live. You come back later and watch it. So yeah.
You might, and when you come back later and watch it and you're watching it and you have questions, you can still put your questions and we'll still come back and answer them.
Yeah.
So that's a great thing in there, because we're in there answering questions, and then there's 3 other practitioners in there answering questions. You do get a lot of your questions answered. Well, you'll get all your questions answered. So we don't miss anything. Everything gets answered. And that can be, I have this going on. What should, I've got reflux and this is happening. What should I do? We're answering everything. So it's very valuable, the level of support you get in there.
There's a lot of live videos, but there's also a lot of pre-recorded videos for in-depth information. And then sometimes someone will ask something and we'll go, you know what, we need to address this. And so we'll do another video and pop it in. So there's a lot of help. I need to quickly answer this one, because there's still some questions around GAPS and AIP and all the different diets and vegetarian and vegan, and how do vegetarian or vegan diets fit with gut healing or GAPS and all of that kind of thing. So,
yeah. Okay. Autoimmune protocol, that's the AIP diet. I think it's fine. Like, it's autoimmune paleo.
It's similar to GAPS.
It's very similar. So I think it's fine. But I do get plenty of people that have tried that and they come over to GAPS. But then there would be people that do autoimmune paleo and
that's all they need.
That's all they need, and it resolve their issues. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I do get people that it hasn't worked for and they come over and do GAPS. Vegan, vegetarian, that's not the kind of diet I recommend. I don't think it's the best diet for human health. I also I know it's not the most ethical diet because of mass production of grains and all the things that go into vegan and vegetarian diets, and how much animal habitat is lost in that kind of food production. So the most sustainable way to eat is as close to home as possible, grass-fed, ethically raised animals and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, when it comes to our approach to gut health, it's not a vegetarian or vegan approach.
We do eat a lot of vegetables, and sometimes people don't want to go for the red meat and they want to eat fish and chicken, and that's still fine. You can get a lot of the the nutrients you need from that. Some people will only have meat stocks mostly, and vegetables and eggs and butter and things like that. And do you think that's still a good option, Elise? Yeah,
definitely. You got to do what you can. if you can say, if you're not eating red meat or chicken, I think I saw someone ask a question about that. Then I'm assuming you're eating fish, then you'd want to make lots of fish stock. Fish stock is a really good healing stock. And if you can eat the organs of the fish, so if you're able to get the liver. And
my seafood store, because they've got their own trawler and they do their own fishing, she gets the barramundi livers and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
I would really be trying to get that stuff in.
So good for iodine, isn't it?
And just getting those B vitamins and things and iron that you won't be getting from, because you're not having the red meat. So
so do you have time for more, or do we need to stop? There's still a lot more. Okay, Kelly says, what are your thoughts on store-bought sauerkraut and other health foods now available in many places? I have a busy life and I struggle with making everything.
Yeah, I buy sauerkraut a lot, and it's fine. Just make sure what you're getting is really good quality. So kehoe
in the fridge section.
Yeah, in the fridge section. Kehoes, peace love vegetables, or if you can source one that's locally made, then that's great.
Can a poor gut health affect a child's speech development?
Definitely, because it's that gut-brain connection. So overload of toxins in the gut, it affects the way the brain communicates with the rest of the body. So absolutely, yes.
Kate says, I had intravenous antibiotics in January 2021, have recently been really sick after drinking untreated water while camping. None of the 30 plus other people who drank the water got sick. I've just been on another round of fierce antibiotics and I feel defeated. What tips do you have to get my microbiome back to fighting fit? Bearing in mind, I'm a busy working mum with one vegetarian kid and one picky eater. Help me.
Do the gut health formula. We talk a lot about picky eaters in there. Fussy eaters, and we get amazing photos in there of like, oh my gosh, look what my child is eating now. So yeah,
there's ways to sneak in the healing foods, and then once they start getting better, they start to crave the good food, and so do we. Kim said, I was advised to avoid all fermented foods for 2 years after a bioscreen stool test, and put on a very strict gut healing diet with mountains of supplements, which didn't work. That sounds expensive. Yeah. Is there a reason I should be avoiding all fermented foods for such a long period? I'd like to start slowly introducing them back if I can.
Yeah, I think you should be bringing them back, and there's going to be, that's why I really don't like that kind of approach, because it's very symptom based and not actually addressing the root cause. So if you were to go with a more GAPS approach, you would be actually addressing the root cause. I don't like dancing around food intolerances. Like, we don't want to just go, oh, there's this kind of intolerance going, okay, we just need to avoid these things.
You can never have it again.
Let's get to the root cause. And in saying that, if someone's having a reaction from a food, I definitely will not be making them eat it. But it's more so that we will be working on the root cause so we can be bringing it back in. We're not just accepting that that's a food intolerance. A food intolerance is a symptom. It's a symptom. We need to address the underlying issue.
Yeah, I couldn't eat dairy. I couldn't even eat butter or ghee.
I couldn't eat dairy either.
It took me a year of gut healing, and now I can eat any dairy. Do you ever get to a point? Oh, there you go. Someone just asked if they could eventually be able to eat foods like that again.
Yes.
And she said she's reacting to more and more things. Yeah, so that's getting to the root cause. Same again. Joe, are the recipes in your new book similar to the ones from your GAPS 6-week program? Okay, it's not a 6-week program, but 6-stage program. Yep. There is a lot of recipes in the book that were originally in the program. A lot of them have been updated, zhuzhed up. But it's, GAPS style recipes, but a lot easier to follow than a program for intro, because it's just recipes you can add into your everyday diet. Okay. I've forgotten the name of that It's not, is it
Helicobacter pylori.
Thank you, because I'm thinking that's
It's not helicopter. Yeah.
That's not helicopter. That would have been the
autocorrect. Helicobacter pylori, which is something that overgrows in the stomach. That is an example of something where it's like 80% of the population have it, and most have it with absolutely no symptoms and no harm to their health. So when it comes to addressing Helicobacter pylori, I only address it when there's symptoms. And it's usually very well addressed by improving the health of the stomach through increasing stomach acids and things like that. So that's the kind of approach to take to that one.
There's a lot of questions that are practical type ones, like cooking for large amounts of people, cooking on a budget, lunchbox ideas. I can address those individually later in the chat. I can just send you links because I've always got stuff online about all of that. So I'll leave those ones and we'll just do the hard ones because Elise is here. All right. Let's see. I have a daughter who's always itchy. So then there's always the itchy and the eczema type questions. Again, root cause, gut health.
Yeah, absolutely.
Her mum says we don't eat processed foods and we're pretty healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, there's just going to be something still underlying there. And that's like the path people go through. Like that's been Joe's experience and mine as well. Like constantly improving your health, improving the way you're eating all whole foods, really healthy, still got these issues going on. Like, why is this still happening? And that's why we both got to doing GAPS, because it was like, improve my health so much, eating so much good stuff, and then still not getting totally there.
There's a few questions on picky eaters, but yeah, like it's very much gut health based when a child is refusing vegetables and things and wants to eat white food. And we do really go into that in the gut health formula. It's kind of that's a really good reason to do the gut health formula. Yeah.
And Corinne said, just adding meat stocks to everything, including pancakes, rice, smoothies, and sauerkraut juice to my kids' diet over a year. Corinne did the gut health formula.
Oh, yes.
So she's done it. So added these things in, like we said, and then my picky eater now eats kraut from the jar and even ate a boiled egg yesterday. He rarely gets oral candida anymore, and if he does, it takes far more junk to instigate it. And clears it way quicker. Also just finished eating a paprika lamb for dinner. Yum.
That one's made. That recipe was originally Elise's mum's recipe. I just twisted a bit.
Yeah.
So good.
So yummy.
Okay, so information about worms, parasites, and cyclic vomiting in children.
Yeah, so I cover the worms, parasites, and the vomiting can have a lot to do with worms and parasites and things like liver flukes and stuff like that. So, that would be something to chat to a practitioner about. And seeing a naturopath and looking at homeopathics, they often work really well for kids. And that's an approach you could take to working on that, but definitely working on gut health, which I feel like is the answer I'm giving constantly here, but because it is the answer.
How can we help tweens who we suspect have leaky gut with anxiety, school transition, puberty, using healthy gut principles?
Bringing in the healthy foods, and also do chat to a practitioner, because there are supplements you can use that help with anxiety. And so I do use that quite a lot, because even though we definitely want to address root cause, there are still, doesn't mean we don't help symptoms, because if someone's anxious or someone's having an issue with sleep, I know that we can use some supplements that are going to help with that whilst we work on the root cause. So it's particularly good for anxiety. There's quite a few different ways you can approach anxiety that really help.
Yeah.
Like in the short term, treat the symptom as well as addressing the root cause.
There was another one that was similar that I've lost now, but anyway, can you improve psoriatic
arthritis? Yeah, it's an autoimmune condition. Yes, definitely address what's going on in the gut.
And diverticulitis, that's like what you were saying before about
ulcerative colitis and those kinds of things. And we've worked with that a lot in the clinic as well.
Yeah. I've found I respond best to paleo type diets, would like to incorporate on the odd occasion legumes and pulses, but they irritate my gut, something shocking. Also, brown rice or too much rice in any form can cause me pain. End up constipated even when I keep my fluid intake up, and suffer from extended bowel. I noticed some of Jo's recipes, she uses these ingredients. Okay, so Fiona, when we were working on gut health for 2 years, I religiously did not use those ingredients. Starchy foods are very hard to digest for a damaged gut. So you take them out as you heal. You can slowly bring them back in later. That's the short answer?
Yeah.
Is that okay, Elise?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we started our gut health journey nearly 8 years ago now. So we sort of went whole foods, slowly into grain-free, then into GAPS, then back out to just grain-free with some starchy foods like a bit of potato and a little bit of tapioca. And now we're at the whole foods with some grains. So some sourdough, some rice, some corn, but not too much and well prepared. So for instance, when we have things like corn tortillas, they're made with the fermented corn. Okay. Lynn,
Well, I just scrolled down to see how many questions.
I know we're not going to get through them tonight. I'm just seeing, do you want to just scroll down and see if there's any that look really like something you feel like we haven't covered?
Yeah, that's a good
In
idea.
principle, at least. There's a lot that, you've probably gotten the idea from the gut health principles that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Histamine issues we haven't really talked about.
Yeah.
And that's another one I've got a really good podcast on that Elise did. So I'll put that podcast in the group if anyone wants to listen to that.
Yeah. All right. So, when it comes to the histamine side of stuff, it is like that whole immune system being in the gut lining, that we can end up with an overactive immune system. Histamine is basically, if you think of what you take an antihistamine for, when your histamine levels are high, you get allergy-like response. So runny nose, watery eyes, red eyes, itchy skin, hives, racing mind because it dilates blood vessels in the brain. Your arms can feel really heavy and tired. You can feel wired and not able to sleep, but wake up feeling really exhausted. Heart racing. They're all I can think of. Sneezing. So they're like all the histamine type symptoms. So it's basically like having an allergic response. But it can happen. These histamines are kind of like a bucket, and it's just when the bucket overflows, then you start having histamine response. And what can cause this is if your gut lining's damaged, and your microbiome's unhappy, you can have bacteria in the gut that produce too many histamines. Your gut is not producing enough of the enzyme that breaks down histamine, diamine oxidase or DAO. And if your liver's not happy, then it's not going to process histamines properly. So you can have these multiple factors. That means your histamine bucket starts overflowing and you have these allergy type responses. Getting red and flushed in the face, red ears, they're ones as well. So yeah, that's what the histamine side of things is. So it's addressing the gut, so that you can produce the enzyme that breaks it down, that you don't have so many of the histamine producing bacteria, and your liver's functioning better, so it can process the histamines better. So it's all about healing the gut again.
Yep. There's just so many. I will send out in an email. I will send out some ideas for lunch boxes because I've had a lot of people ask about that. Yeah.
Someone's asked about improving gut health without a gallbladder, because it's hard to eat the good fats. So you can get your liver functioning perfectly well without a gallbladder and producing bile and all that kind of thing. So your liver can compensate for not having a gallbladder, but you already won't have been digesting fat properly if you had to get your gallbladder, causing gallstones and all that kind of thing. So that the root cause problem is still there, that the bile's not flowing properly, and you need to address that. So yes, you can totally eat the fats. You just need to address the root cause there. All right.
so many things that I'd love to dive into with these questions, but
So there's just questions, one about chronic constipation, one about encoparesis. They're kind of down the same path. Yes, working on your gut definitely helps with these things. Chronic constipation, there's probably going to be fat digestion, liver, gallbladder stuff going on there, or something affecting peristalsis, which is a muscle movement in the gut that moves things through. So yes, absolutely. Anything going on with the bowels 100% is impacted by the health of the gut. So as someone said, how do you eat fermented foods when you have an allergy to histamines? You don't have an allergy to histamines. It's just everything I explained, that your bucket's overflowing. So it's addressing that, and so that you tolerate the histamine. So you don't have to keep having a histamine intolerance.
Also, when you mentioned the histamine symptoms, did you mention anxiety and racing heart?
Yeah, I mentioned racing heart, but I didn't say anxiety. I said racing mind, but yes, anxiety.
And like that intense kind of feeling.
I've
always struggled with histamine issues ever since I was a tiny kid, and didn't realize until I grew up that it was probably partly, a lot of it was mold issues. And we had a house that flooded underneath every year, and my room was downstairs. So I've probably always suffered from mold issues. That's another rabbit hole.
Yes. All right. I reckon we're going to have to wrap it up.
Yes, it's already 8:16.
Yeah. So the email may have already come out to you guys. If there's something you really wanted to know and you didn't get answered, you could respond to that email and let us know. And if you have any questions about the gut health formula, we'd be happy to answer those as well. But the link will be in the email, that if you're wanting to jump in there, the link's in there for your $20 discount, and we answer everything in there. So every question gets answered.
Don't forget that Elise has the live Q&As on her Instagram. So if you've still got stuff that you haven't gotten answered, that's another good place to go.
Yeah. So every fortnight we do a different topic. So our next one coming up is on the 15th of February, and it's on intermittent fasting, keto and that kind of thing. And I'm going to get them all up on my website. So all the ones we've done so far, we have all the recordings from them. So we really need to get them up on the website so you can go and access them. There's each, topic. We've covered some really good topics so far: parasites, SIBO, weight Loss, lots of things. So we do them every fortnight on the Wellbelly Health Clinic Instagram page. Right.
Wellbelly Health Clinic. You can also look on my YouTube channel or my podcast channel there's so many interviews from Elise and others that cover most of these things. So yeah, if you feel like you need to get some direction for which way to go to find the answers, feel free to email or message though.
Cool. Thanks, Jo.
Thanks, Elise. So much to learn.
So much to learn. Yeah. So much sleep to be had now. My boys get me up.
Oh yeah, it's 9:18 where you are.
It is. Yeah. So time to head off to bed. But I love doing these webinars. It's so much fun. Just knowing there's people listening. Like, I miss doing our seminars and having an audience actually in front of us.
I know. I was excited to actually have something live.
Yeah, I know. One day we'll do a seminar again, because that's my favorite bit. Like afterwards, chatting to everybody. And
so I miss it. I bet you guys must miss all the live stuff too. We'll get back there, I hope.
Definitely get back there.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, guys. Have a good night. Thanks, Elise.